Hello everyone, wishing you a wonderful new day. Thank you for accompanying me throughout this journey. Hope you enjoy watching the video. That morning, Hoai Ca went into the forest with her to pick bamboo shoots. The forest was deep and dense, the rocky slopes slick and treacherous, not a place one should wander alone. Hoai Ca kept close behind her, listening to the sound of his machete clearing the thick undergrowth ahead. Along the way, her gaze was drawn to clusters of tender young bamboo shoots sprouting beneath the foliage, and a few bunches of ripe red forest berries dangling overhead. She stepped off the narrow trail, following a small dip in the ground to get a closer look. It was only a few steps, but the sound of his machete grew faint. She called softly, and no answer. At that moment, her foot slipped on a moss-covered rock, slick as ice. She lost her balance and tumbled down a slope. A branch whipped hard across her shoulder, and her head struck the trunk of a large tree. Everything went black. Up above, Ha had just finished gathering a few clumps of bamboo shoots when he turned back and saw no sign of Hoai Ca. He called out, searching around, but his voice was swallowed by the whisper of the forest wind. Thinking she might have gone back ahead of him, he hurried down the trail with his basket of shoots. But when he reached home, his mother shook her head. No, she hasn't been back all morning. A cold chill shot down his spine. The sun was already dipping low behind the canopy. And Hoai Ca was still missing in the forest. The next morning, after a restless night tangled in dreams of old memories, Hoai Ca jolted awake. Her heart pounded, her breath came fast. Fragments of the past rushed back, Tony's radiant face, as he ran into her arms, Hong's warm hand holding hers during their happiest days. And the furious, disdainful gaze of his mother, Tony, Hong. She whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. She remembered everything. But the sight around her made her freeze. Gone was the little home of his family, gone were the roosters crowing. Only the damp smell of the forest floor and the trickle of running water remained. Where was she? Her body ached all over, her head still dizzy. Hoai Ca leaned against a tree trunk and slowly pushed herself upright. All around were thick trees and a winding stream. With no sense of direction, she decided to follow the water, hoping it would lead her downstream. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, Ha was still combing through the undergrowth. He waded through the dense bushes, shouting her name until his voice went hoarse, but only the sound of birds taking flight answered him. Half the morning passed, and there was still no sign of her. Worrying tightened in his chest like a vice. In the end, he returned home to tell his mother. Just then, the familiar figure appeared at the gate. Where's Hoai Ca? He asked urgently, his voice taut with alarm. Hearing Ha and his mother recount what had happened the day before, Hung froze. A cold sweat ran down his back. He could not lose her again. Without hesitation, he urged them to gather more help. A few close neighbors, upon hearing the news, dropped what they were doing, grabbed machetes and flashlights, and headed into the forest together. On the slippery, damp trails, their calls echoed through the trees. Hoai Ca. 3 days passed in the deep forest. Hoai Ca had lost count of how many times she woke, only to drift back into unconsciousness from exhaustion. Hunger gnawed at her insides, and the cold of the night bit into her skin like teeth. She moved through clusters of shrubs, finding a few ripe wild berries and tree roots that dripped with clear water. The icy stream water slid down her throat, giving her just enough strength to keep moving. Every time she closed her eyes, the images of Hung and Tony appeared vividly before her, his warm gaze, the boy's innocent smile. They were the only things keeping her on her feet. I must live, I have to make it back, she murmured, as if swearing an oath. On the morning of the 4th day, after following a long mountain stream, Hoai Ca suddenly heard the faint hum of a motor somewhere far away. Her heart pounded wildly, gathering every last shred of strength. She stumbled toward the sound. Finally, the dense forest canopy opened up to reveal a wide stretch of asphalt, a national highway. But, she realized, this was not anywhere near home. It was a strange place, likely more than 10 kilometers from her village. At the same time, back home, Hung could no longer keep calm. After days of scouring the forest with her and the neighbors, without finding a trace of her, he decided to go to the commune police. "I'm asking for your help, to find someone. My friend's been missing for 4 days now, somewhere in the northern forest area." His voice was hoarse from worrying and lack of sleep. The officer nodded, quickly jotting down the details, assigning personnel, and preparing equipment. Hung stood there, his hand clenched tight, eyes fixed on the map spread across the table. Only one thought burned in his mind: Hoai Ca, you must hold on until I get to you. Day 5, Lythieuca's stomach had been empty since morning. Her strength was fading as she followed the national highway until she stopped in front of a roadside noodle shop. Hesitantly stepping inside, she mumbled, "Auntie, I don't have any money, but I can wash dishes, serve tables." In exchange for a bowl of noodles, the shop owner took one look at the girl's worn-out figure and dirt-stained clothes, then nodded. A steaming hot bowl of noodles was set in front of her, fragrant steam curling into the air. She ate slowly, each bite bringing a lump to her throat. She couldn't tell if it was from hunger or from homesickness. After finishing, Hoai Ca rolled up her sleeves and quietly carried a stack of bowls to the sink. The cold water splashed against her hands, but her heart felt warmer knowing that, at the very least, there were still people willing to help her. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ca arrived at his house to ask about her. Not seeing Hoai Ca, he heard from a neighbor that she had gone into the forest a few days ago and never came back. His expression instantly tightened, and without another word, he sped off toward the forest. On a forest trail, he ran into Hung. After listening to Hung recount everything, his gaze darkened. Hung lowered his head, his voice heavy. "It's all because of me. If it weren't for me, she wouldn't have gone through so much trouble." Ca patted his shoulder. "What's done is done. Don't blame yourself anymore. The most important thing now is to find her. I truly wish the best for you too, and I'll help you search." The two men, who once couldn't even stand in the same place, now strode side by side, plunging into the depths of the forest with only one shared wish: to bring Hoai Ca home safely. Day 6, after days of wandering, her legs aching, body covered in sweat and dust, Hoai Ca finally found herself on a coach heading toward Kindgirl. Throughout the entire journey, she could only sit silently by the window, thanking God that she had survived, and for the strangers who had shown her kindness, the helping hands that reached out just when she thought she could no longer go on. The bus stopped. She stepped down, her legs trembling with anticipation. The familiar countryside slowly emerged from her hazy memories. She followed the village path, asking for directions along the way. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat when, by the roadside under the shade of a large tree, she spotted a familiar figure resting, his mother. "Oh my goodness, Hoai Ca," the woman cried, her eyes brimming with tears. Choking up, she replied, I made it back, Auntie." The woman immediately helped her home. In the warmth of the small house, Hoai Ca recounted the days she had been lost in the forest, surviving on wild fruit and stream water, and how she was fortunate to meet someone kind who showed her the way back. The woman listened, her relief mixed with sorrow, and told her how, over the past few days, everyone had been searching for her without eating or sleeping. At that very moment, Hung and Ha were in the neighboring district, seeking help from the local authorities. Upon hearing the news that Hoai Ca had returned, they dropped everything, picked up Tony, and rushed back as fast as they could. They didn't yet know what the moment of reunion would be like, but in their hearts, there was only one wish, to hold her tight and believe that all of this had only been a nightmare, and that it was finally over. The moment the car stopped at the gate, Hung was already calling out, his voice urgent, as if 1 second too late would mean losing the most important thing in his life. Hoai Ca, Tony. The door swung open. In an instant, Tony darted into his mother's arms, burying his head tightly against her chest, as if trying to make up for all the nights he had missed her and could only cry in silence. Hoai Ca held her son, pressing her face into his soft hair, feeling that familiar warmth that made her throat tighten. She lifted her eyes, and there was Hung, thinner, darker, yet with eyes still brimming with the same love as before. In that moment, all worries seemed to dissolve, leaving only the overwhelming joy of people who had found each other again after days of being lost. Everyone went inside. Ha, being thoughtful, took Tony outside for dessert, giving Hoai Ca and Hung some privacy. Sitting across from each other, Hoai Ca slowly recounted her days in the forest, how she followed the stream in search of a way out, and most importantly, how she had remembered everything. Hung listened, tears rolling down his face, filled with both relief and heartache. In misfortune, there's still a blessing, he said softly, taking her hand. Hoai Ca looked deeply into his eyes and asked about the hardships he was facing. But Hung only smiled and shook his head, hiding the truth about his mother's enormous debt. He didn't want to worry her, and simply told her, "You and Tony should stay here. This place is safe for you both, leave everything else to me." That evening, the kitchen glowed with warm light. The table was laid out with a simple yet hearty meal. Everyone gathered together, eating and laughing. No one mentioned the anxious days they had just endured. They only raised their cups to celebrate Hoai Ca's return. In each person's eyes shone the pure joy, the priceless happiness of a family reunited around the dinner table. Although Hung had repeatedly warned her that this was absolutely not the time to return to the old house, fearing that those who once tried to harm her would discover she was still alive, the return of her memories made Hoai Ca restless. After so many days apart, the longing for home smoldered in her heart like a quiet flame, the memory of the green garden, the flock of chickens scurrying after her every morning, the rows of vegetables she had tended with her own hands, and the small house that held so many precious moments. One afternoon, while Ha was busy working in the fields, Hoai Ca gently tugged at his hand and whispered, "I just want to go back for a little while." The older woman looked into her earnest eyes, and at last, she nodded. They slipped away, taking a narrow shortcut along a trail she hadn't walked in a long time. The old gate came into view, its paint peeling, the garden overgrown with grass. Hoai Ca stood still for a long moment, her hand trembling as it touched the latch, as if she could touch the past itself. Inside, the smell of damp wood and garden soil made her chest tighten. She walked around slowly, gently stroking each familiar object, bending down to feed the chickens, checking the vegetable rows, as if to make sure everything was still there, waiting for her. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Hung was hurrying from place to place, meeting old friends and former colleagues, hoping to scrape together enough to pay off the enormous debt his mother had left behind. Some, moved by his plight, agreed to lend him a little. Others shook their heads in quiet refusal, burdened by their own struggles. Each time he left empty-handed, his steps grew heavier, but in his mind, only one thought rang clear: I must save the house, so that Hoai Ca and Tony will have a home to return to. Unexpectedly, Hung returned. The moment he stepped through the gate, he froze. There was Hoai Ca, bent over, tending the garden. His heart tightened, a mix of relief and fear. He hurried forward, grabbed her hand, and pulled her inside, his voice dropping low. Why? Why did you come back here? It's dangerous, don't you know? Hoai Ca looked up, about to speak, but the whirring in his eyes silenced her. Hung sat down heavily in a chair, let out a deep sigh, and for the first time told her everything, about the massive debt his mother had borrowed, about her disappearance, and about the men who had once tried to harm her. He admitted that, to this day, he still didn't understand what his mother had mortgaged the house for, only that he had to take responsibility for the debt. If he didn't, the house would be gone, and she and Tony would have no place to come back to. He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes tired but unwavering. I didn't tell you sooner, because I didn't want you to worry, but now you and Auntie must go back right away. On foot, I can't risk driving you, in case someone sees. Then he turned to Mrs. Ha, speaking earnestly. Auntie, please help me take care of Hoai Ca and Tony for a while longer. Once everything is settled, I'll come for them. Hoai Ca wanted to say something, but seeing the tension and helplessness in his eyes, she could only nod quietly. When the two of them left, Hung stood still on the porch. The evening breeze swept past, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant cooking fires. Closing his eyes, he whispered into the emptiness, a promise only the wind could hear. Hoai Ca, you've suffered so much. To have a home, yet not be able to return, forgive me. I'll pay off every debt, and bring you and our child home. I swear it.
Ở tối hôm nay rất nhiều diễn biến bất ngờ đã xảy ra. Liệu tập tiếp theo sẽ có những điều bất ngờ gì? Mời mọi người cùng đón xem tập 21, nơi Hoai Ca đi tìm lại hạnh phúc.